So now let's move on to the actual calculation. What is the process of calculation before we look at the assets? All we have to do for zakat is add up the value of your zakatable assets. That's one. Number two, deduct those debts which can be deducted. And number three, you work out then the net. What is the difference, or what's the sum? And then you pay 2.5% on that. That's all you have to do. That is the zakat process. Adding, subtracting, working out what it equals, applying 2.5% on that. Some key principles for calculations to keep in mind. Uh, Zakat is not only paid on wealth that you have saved or kept for a full Islamic year, right? It's not necessary to hold or save that, right? It's not necessary. It's paid upon the wealth that you have at present, whether even if you earned it, uh, for example, you gained that wealth 2 days ago, but as long as you are equal or over and above the threshold, you'll pay zakat. Okay, so it's not like income tax either. Zakat is not due upon income per se. It's on retained unspent wealth. That's how zakat differs from taxation, where it's generally based on income and revenue. Up here, it's more about the unspent and unused portion of wealth, zakatable wealth that you have with you. It's like a snapshot. That's what we call a snapshot and balance sheet. It's not an income or cash flow related. We're not looking at cash flows here. It's just looking at what's your current, financial well-being. What's the current status? Are you eligible to pay zakat? Are you well enough? Do you have sufficient funds for zakat purposes? Yes or no? That's what we're looking at. C, it's an individual obligation and should be calculated individually. What do we mean by this? I shouldn't, if me and my family we're all paying zakat, I shouldn't be applying my debts and liabilities onto my spouse, onto my children. That's for my calculation. So what you should do is do each person's calculation individually. And then, yes, it can be that the husband, the wife, or whoever takes responsibility to pay everyone's zakah. That's not a problem, right? You can all do it. And that's how it should be done. It's important to go through the calculation process formally and not just guesstimate from the outset. That's very important because zakah is, as I mentioned, it's one of our core pillars and requirements of faith. We have to be careful that we do it properly. We can't just guess in these things, and that's why it's so important. These workshops and seminars and courses are extremely important. And Alhamdulillah, may Allah reward you for taking that time on a Sunday to sit and learn about zakah, a pillar which clearly shows you how important you're taking it. And may Allah reward you all, because this is purely from the mercy of Allah that He has given us an hour. He selected us for this hour to talk about knowledge. The hadith mentions that man salaka tariqan yaltamisu fihi ilma sahhala Allahu lahu tariqan ila al-jannah. That whoever treads the path of seeking knowledge, Allah will make it easy for him to enter paradise. Another hadith mentions that the angels spread their wings for the seeker of knowledge. So we have full belief, whilst we're engaged in this, we are seekers of knowledge, of Islamic knowledge, of traditional knowledge. And the angels have spread their wings out for all of us. That's our belief. The Messenger of Allah said this. In fact, the hadith mentions that even the fish in the sea, they make dua for us, for the people who seek knowledge. So this is a very blessed hour that we're involved in the day. Seeking knowledge is extremely beneficial, and being involved in knowledge is one of the best things a person can do in his life. Right? It's one of the best ways to attain paradise and attain the pleasure of Allah. So let's look at the zakatable assets. Step one, cash and liquid assets. Okay. Of course, everything cash is zakatable. Whatever it may be, wherever it may be, whichever currency, fully subject to zakat. So whether it's the pound, dollar, a euro, dirham, dinar, rupee, whatever it may be, it's all zakatable. Of course, interest, riba, is not zakatable. So in fact, you have to give 100% away from the riba. So if any Muslim, unfortunately, for whatever reason, accrued some interest earnings, and of course we believe every Muslim knows that interest is unlawful, but for whatever reason he was stuck in a situation and he received some interest, in that scenario what he should do is give away all that impure income, completely disassociate yourself from the riba, because that attracts the displeasure of Allah, and we don't want to do anything or have any association with funds which are displeasing to Allah. So we'll get rid of the interest immediately. When you go into charities and you make this payment, be sure to put this interest in the riba category, because riba has different ways it can be spent. Yes, it's given to the poor and needy, but it can also be used for other things, and therefore we should select riba, right? And always, when it comes to zakat, always make sure you put it in the zakat category, nowhere else, because zakat is very specific to specific categories. Gold and silver. Gold and silver, according to the Hanafi school, it's zakatable in whichever form it may be, regardless whether it's an ingot, a brick, jewelry, whatever it may be. It's zakatable. According to other schools, so the Shafi'i school, the Maliki school, the Hanbali school, they're of the view that when it comes to gold and silver, if it's personal jewelry, zakat is not due upon that, right? For personal jewelry, it's only due upon that which is either excessive or it's in investments, right? You've invested in gold or holding it for investment purposes. That's when zakat is due upon gold, but it's not due upon jewelry. When it comes to mixed metal, so for example, you have white gold or you have a 12 carat ring, then zakat is still due upon whatever portion of gold that's there. According to the Hanafi school, of course, when you're talking about jewelry, zakat is due on whatever portion. So if it's 9 carats, you'll pay zakat on the 9 carats. How do you do that? Just work out the price per gram for the 9 carat of gold, right? So that will reflect the value of gold, and just pay zakat on that. So you have 20 grams, you multiply by 20 and pay 2.5% of that. Which price do you use when it comes to gold and silver? You can use a scrap gold value, which is like the second-hand gold value. You're not required to use the live universal prices, which are for new gold, because that's generally at 2, 3, 4 pounds higher than scrap gold. So if you go to a jeweler, they'll give you the scrap gold, how much they'll buy your gold off you. That's what you need to factor in. What's the worth, market value of your gold? So you can do that, or alternatively, you can go online, and there's websites which offer scrap gold values. They do offer, so you can get that online to get the scrap gold value. Business assets. When it comes to businesses, again, a business has generally the following items, right? Cash, receivables, and inventory. Those are the key zakatable assets in a business. What are business assets? It's exactly what in accounting terms what we call inventory, right? Anything bought to resell. That's what is a business asset. That's what we're considering. Now, you can be a property trader, you can be a trader in land, you can be a trader on the financial markets. If that's your business, meaning that's how you're earning, that's your means of income, where you're buying and flipping different assets, financial instruments, whatever it may be, for a profit, and that's your business. You're not treating it as an investment, rather it's like your business that you do on a day-to-day, then that's zakatable fully as your business, right? If it's a long-term investment, we'll discuss that later, right? In the next couple of slides. But we're talking about here as a business. So if there's a property developer, property trader, whose business is to develop and sell property, and he would account for his property as an inventory on his balance sheet, that also is his business asset, and zakat is payable upon that property or land, whatever it may be, annually at its market value, because that's his business. So zakat is due on business assets from that angle, where it's those things purchased to resell with capital gain and profit. Things in a business such as goodwill and other intangibles, property, plant, equipment, and other fixtures and fittings, these things are not zakatable. Any income generating asset which is not for trading purposes, not for selling, is purely just assisting you, like your software, your laptops, your computers, your shelving, these things are not zakatable. Okay? So it all comes down to intention. What makes a tradable asset? Anything you bought to resell, it's an inventory from accounting, but even from zakat purposes, it's the idea is to sell that on. If it's inventory, you're buying to sell, it's zakatable. If it's not inventory, you've not bought to resell, rather it's a long-term investment, or it's it's another store of wealth. For example, I know, look, fiat currency is depreciating in value because inflation has increased tremendously. There's much more quantitative easing, much more money is being printed, and therefore a basket of goods now in this year will have increased significantly compared to last year. So I don't want to hold on to fiat currency in my bank accounts because it's just being eaten away. It's eroding in value. So what I do is I transfer that into property or land, not with the intention of selling that. Rather, I've just transferred it. I've bought a property as a store of value and store of wealth. There'll be no zakat on that because I'm not earning rental income. I've just bought another home, right? It'll be considered to be just your personal belongings, personal wealth. That's all. I've just changed the form just to hedge against, right, and mitigate the inflation risk that exists within um, fiat currency. So I've just converted the asset. That's all. But zakat will not be due upon this because it's not a buy to sell, or it's not my business. It's purely there as now a store of value. Rather, it's just it's a long term investment in that sense. But it's not. I'm not even earning rental income on it, right? Yeah, if I was earning rental income, then zakat will be due upon the rental income only, still not on the property. And that's why, as we just discussed, when it comes to property, a residential property is not zakatable. Neither the house you are renting out, except the surplus rental income. So it's the surplus, whatever's remaining, the net, the unspent amount. That's why you'll pay zakat on in terms of rental income. That'll be just added to your cash and be part of your cash holdings. Um, However, if you're a trader in property, it's your business, then you will pay zakat on the full value of the property. Shares and unit trusts, equity investments. When it comes to equity investments, again, the same principle applies. If a person's business is buying and selling, he sits daily or takes out time to buy and sell to capture some small profit or however big from the price movements of equities, and that's all he's doing. He's buying. Clearly, I'm just looking for the right time to sell, or I want to sell. It's 100%. That's the intention. I'm just looking at the markets. Then he's a trader. He's a trader. He's not doing it for investment for growth purposes. It's not a long-term growth portfolio. It's purely just trading. Yeah, it's like day trading, so to speak. But of course, as we know, day trading. Many scholars are of the view that when it comes to day trading, swing trading, where it's before T+2, before settlement, it's not Sharia compliant because you are not the owner of record. You still don't have liability for the underlying, and that's necessary when it comes to trading. So you should have liability for the underlying investment. But if a person just say buying and selling and his view within the short term, he wants to sell. Clearly, that's his only thing. It's like a business where he's doing to sell, flip for capital gain purposes. Then zakat will be due upon that full amount, the full investment. However, if it's a long term investment, which means it's for growth purposes, or you've invested through a robo advisory firm or platform, you hold equities in your portfolio, but again, it's for growth purposes. It's not for buying, selling, and making small returns immediately. Then zakat will be based upon the underlying zakatable assets in the company, in the equity. Now, for most people, this becomes very challenging. How do you work out the underlying zakatable assets? Those who have no financial background will find this challenging. So what we did at the National Zakat Foundation was we did a research. We looked at the FTSE 100, and we realized that 66 companies out of the 100 had net zakatable assets below 25%. And therefore, if you use 25%, we have full or very strong confidence that your zakat liability will be absorbed, and inshallah you'll have met your zakat liability for your equity investments. Of course, any dividends will also be zakatable as cash, right? So you can use that 25% proxy. And if you want to know more about that, how that works, you can just Google this online. The entire research is available online. When it comes to pensions, this is a more challenging one. Uh, so your national insurance, for example, in the UK, you have national insurance or you have state pensions elsewhere, which is like a compulsory deduction. You have no ownership of those funds, but the state gives you a stipend or a monthly kind of income upon retirement. Zakat is not due in the duration of the invest or in the duration of you working and making contributions to national insurance or the state pension system or whatever it may be in whichever country. Every country has some differences in how it operates. Like some countries call it a provident fund, right? There's different terms, but generally the idea is the same. Then in the UK and especially in other European countries, you have two types of pension schemes. You have the final salary, which is really a type of defined benefit scheme, right? There's two types. You have career average and final salary scheme. Final salary and career average are just the formulae which are used to work out the benefits you'll receive upon retirement. So that's defined benefit schemes. There is no zakat due upon that either, because you don't own the underlying investments, you don't bear the investment risk. Rather, it's just a sum that's owed to you as deferred income, right, from your employer. The third type, which is zakatable, are money purchase schemes, which are really known as defined contribution schemes as well. Zakat is due upon them. How do you work out zakat on that? That's where it gets more challenging. When it comes to defined contribution schemes, we need to look at the underlying fund, what it's composed of, because they'll be composed of equities, of commodities, of property, of some will have bonds if it's non-Sharia compliant, fixed income instruments, marketable securities. These are all different asset classes found in portfolio, pension portfolio. So what we did at the National Zakat Foundation was we connected the research. We looked at the 100 top pension funds of each type of fund. So uh, we looked at funds for direct property. We looked at funds of equity funds. We looked at Sharia funds. We looked at mixed asset funds, and we looked at um, income bond, fixed income, and bond corporate bond funds, right? And we worked out another proxy for people to work out. And I don't have these proxies in front of me on the screen, just because I always encourage people to go and find. You can go to the National Zakat Foundation website, nzf.org.uk, and find the entire research there and the proxies. You can Google this and it'll come, because there's a lot of information there to digest. And also on the NZF website, the calculator that we have for zakat, that automatically applies the proxy that you have, right? So if, for example, you want to work out zakat on your property or property fund, which is 15%, by the way, that's the proxy. You can go on the calculator and automatically it'll apply the proxy there. So if you put in £1,000 as your pension in a property fund, 15% will automatically apply to that. Only £150 is zakatable from there. Likewise, the Sharia fund is 26%. The equity fund is 27%. Mixed assets are 50% zakatable assets, and the bond and fixed income, which is not Sharia compliant, of course, is 100%, because it's all loans which are outstanding in the fund. Money owed to you, if money is owed to you, money is of two types: loans and outstanding invoices for credit sales. Right? So you've sold part of your business, you sold something, then zakat is due on these two things. But you have an option. You can either pay zakat whilst outstanding, or you can wait until you're repaid, but then retrospectively pay every single year. Right? So that's the option. So these two receivables are zakatable. When it comes to other things, for example, loans advanced without any hope of repayment, you gave a loan to somebody and that person's run away. You don't have to pay zakat on that anymore, because you've lost all hope of any repayment. You have outstanding invoices for the sale of personal items. I sold my house, my residential home. The person still has not paid me. Or I sold a car. The person still hasn't paid me. I do not have to pay zakat on the outstanding amount. Wages, fees, remuneration of services are not. Whilst it's outstanding, no zakat is due. Mahar owed to the wife. A sister got married. She's owed. The husband promised her £10,000. He's not even paid her £500 yet. She will not be obliged or required to pay zakat on the 10,000 yet. Inheritance shares, the probate period has not come to an end, and the shares have not been distributed. Zakat will not be due upon the outstanding inheritance. So look, we talked about assets. What can be deducted? Very easily, anything which has been incurred, which is incurred and it's been expensed, you now need to, and it's payable. It's payable now or within the next 12 months. You can deduct this, right? So, for example, I bought something and I have like a 12-month installment plan. I can deduct the 12 months worth of installments. My council tax, because remember, council tax, how it works in the UK anyway, is you will be billed for the full amount, but just the council make it easy for you to pay monthly. You can have a 10-month plan or 12-month plan, and that's whatever's easy for you. But you can also make the full payment. So the entire amount is due, been billed. You can deduct the entire amount, right? For long-term debt such as mortgages or student loans, right? If a up here, student loans really is debatable in a sense. I'm not talking about Sharia compliance, but even in terms of its zakat treatment, because that is deducted at source. It's deducted from your income. It's not a matter of you having to save up and then deduct, um, or it's not part of your wealth and then you're paying off. But this is one view of scholars that they permit up to 12 months worth of capital repayments. Likewise, mortgages. So if a Muslim, unfortunately for whatever reason, um, he had an interest-bearing mortgage which lasts, as you know, 20 years, 25 years, then a person can deduct the capital repayments only, the non-interest portion, for 12 months. If you have an Islamic mortgage, which is usually done through a diminishing musharaka or an ijara structure, whereby you're making monthly rent payments and acquisition payments, you can deduct the 1 month's payment as due, only the 1 month, because that's a liability. The future liabilities will not be deductible. The future sales, so to speak, so that cannot be deducted at present. So this is the calculation then: assets minus liabilities equals net zakatable assets. That's how it all works. That is the calculation. um, and that is a zakat calculation, in all honesty. And just to finish off with, the last slide is who can you give zakat to? Um, it must be a person, a qualifying Muslim, not from the Prophet ﷺ's family. As we know, the hadith prohibits zakat being given to the family of the Messenger of Allah. Rather, we should honor them with sadaqah. Right? You can't give zakat and spend directly on mosques, schools, hospitals, and burial expenses. You have to give zakat in the ownership of a needy person. You can't give it as wages or remuneration for any work that's carried out, and it cannot be given to one's lineal ascendants and descendants or one's wife. Right? You can give it to your brother or sister, and that's the end of our presentation.
Islamic finance learning made simple and memorable.